Morning, everybody. My name's David. Welcome to our session on improving strategy delivery. You have to think big. Just a reminder to everyone, we're actually recording the session, so hope that's okay. Today, there's a couple of us presenting. It'll be we'll take turns in covering certain aspects. As I said, I'm David. I'm the chair of CEO of Deep Team and the chairman of a company called CPS. I'm also director of something called the Core P3M Data Club, which is the originator of this thinking on integrated governance, which we'll come to a bit later. I'm the lead author on integrated governance, and Martin will explain his part in integrated governance, the development of it in his bit. I've been asked to join the BSI's G1 governance committee as a committee member, the co-opted member, and my interest is in aligning business integrated governance to the ISO 37000 governance of organizations standard. And we're currently starting to look at maturity models, metrics, and purpose. A couple of links there to the companies that I work for. And my partner in crime, Martin, please.
Hi, I'm Martin Samphar. I'm associate at Deep Team, and in fact, David and I have known each other for many years and worked together for many years. I head up a small consultancy called 3PMXL, which is about helping organisations to improve around projects, programmes, portfolios and strategy. I used to be the chair of the Association for Project Management Governance, specific interest group, so I've spent a lot of time in governance. I'm still a member of that group, along with, in fact, Greg, who's on the call as well. And so I've led the authorship of a number of APM guides on governance, and also wrote the governance section of the Gower Handbook on Programme Management. And I've been a significant contributor to business integrated governance. So you can see I spent a lot of time on governance, and that's what I think is the recipe for improving value from organisations.
So our agenda today, as I said, we'll zip through it. We'll attempt to establish the case and recap what we've covered previously about our perspective of strategy delivery not being perfect. We'll ask you guys on the call to anonymously, if you don't mind, just share with us some of your pains of strategy delivery. We'll use something called Slido for that, which there is. It's very easy. If you have a mobile phone, go to slido.com or computer, whatever, and the event number. You don't have to remember this second, but the event number is 4064985, and you'll be able to tap in responses to the questions that pop up. So we'll cover. We'll seek your input to your experience of strategy delivery, perfection or not. We'll then progress to position effective organizational governance as a systematic framework to deliver strategy with. Might be an interesting thought for some, but that's what we're going to present. And we'll introduce ISO 37000, released in September 21, as a great set of principles to run your organization by. We'll move on to talk about, well, that's a great set of principles, but we need a model to actually implement something and make something happen beyond just a set of principles. And we'll then retouch back with folks as to what your experience of trying to implement strategy delivery solutions actually is. We don't just mean technology there. We mean what experiences, what pains or successes have you had trying to implement a whole approach to improving strategy delivery in a small number of words, hopefully. We'll then position business integrated governance as a means to make that improvement easier, and talk about some next steps. We can deal with questions along the way through chat. We'll keep an eye on that stuff. We'll do our best to keep up. Any questions that are raised in chat and any points that are raised in the brainstorms, we'll capture them, respond to them, and send responses out en masse properly. We'll we're not necessarily going to be great at answering them off the cuff, but we will get back to you. So that's our agenda. That's what we're going to attempt to cover. So step one, then, just to recap, recap for some, I guess, not for others. The starting proposition here: strategy delivery is not perfect. Well, whatever anecdotal experience we may have ourselves, it's not difficult to do a simple search on Google or ask ChatGPT, whatever. And if you just Google strategy delivery success, it'll get you to a whole lot of articles, links, websites where there's evidence presented formally and academically in some cases, informally from others. But it's not difficult to get people's perspective that strategy delivery is not great. I'm not going to read all these through. You can have a little browse through now, but strategy execution is a dismal failure. 60% do not even link their strategies to budgets. Business skills or leadership talent to drive strategy implementation is an issue. There's lots of evidence, it's easily findable, that strategy delivery is not great. So I would suspect folks who attend these sessions maybe also sense their strategy delivery is not great.
I think the issue here, of course, is that all that evidence points to there being a major issue with an organisation, and of course a massive loss of potential value in organisations. I know that the press at the moment is still talking about the UK's productivity. Well, if we're not getting our strategies right and delivered, then that's contributing to that. So let's just look at what's going on here. Just move the slide on. Oh, you might have to move the slide on. They're not responding. Yeah, in a simple way, then strategy formulation through to delivery is quite straightforward. Typically, the board, the C-suite develop a strategy, pass it down through to the functions to create portfolios, deliver through the functions. There's outcomes that feed back into business performance, and then the board and the C-suite kind of take that performance, reset the strategy. Relatively simple. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than that. But there's issues at each stage of this process because in most organisations, there is a lack of integration between these and leading to poor outcomes. Do you want to do the build, please, David? So, at the board level, often eyes are bigger than the mouth, the stomach sort of thing, objectives exceed the bandwidth. The functions do their interpretation and convert to portfolios, deliver. There's some magic along the way. Outcomes often aren't what they should be. And then the board or C-suite then, of course, often, rather than improving the existing strategy, develop a new one. And we can see, again, the stats are pretty awful. 10% of organisations deliver 2/3 of their strategic depth of lot don't. And a lot of this is down to poor roles, definition, accountability, but also the message. And certainly in my experience in strategy formulation, there's too much transmit and not enough engagement. I had an example in my own career of working with an organisation where they had great strategic objective. It was a global organisation that had built up through acquisition, so lots and lots of different companies around the world, and they wanted to standardise processes so that their global clients, no matter where they touch this particular company, they would see the same thing. Just like you'd go into a Waitrose, you'd see the same branding, get involved in the same process. So that was the overall strategy, but as it got passed down through the organisation, it essentially became a rollout of a global new IT solution. And because there had been insufficient debate and discussion, then pretty much every single country, every single company in each different country worldwide rejected it as a way of working because it did not cater for some of their idiosyncrasies. So for me, if there'd been more listening and less and less transmit, then they would have got to the point what they did. You know, in that particular case, we managed to rescue it, go back to the basics and make sure people really did understand and check out the understanding of the strategy, so that they could deliver it properly, and it was delivered ultimately. See if I can go to the next slide. No, you'll have to do that, David, sorry. So in theory, it's simple, but of course it's far more complex. So if you take the view that there's really two things going on in an organisation: running the organisation, business as usual, changing the organisation, and that change feeds through into really three lots of value generation: transformation portfolio, the value generation portfolio of products and BAU, business as usual, and there might be operations and regulatory portfolio that are needed in terms of changing the organisation and maintain the organisation. No, this is a very simple diagram, of course, but the problem with it, of course, is that these activities are sharing the same resources, trying to work to the same objectives and challenges, but often not well understood. And of course, those resources in terms of money, people and time are being shared. And in the real world, that's a lot more complex than this simple diagram. This diagram shows, in theory, an organisation where strategy is developed, passed through the function, and there's an expectation of outcomes. Oops, sorry. Again, this is simplified. A real organisation's a lot more complex than that. And of course, each particular business unit has its own target, has its own motivations, has its own way of thinking. And getting cross-cutting work done, of course, is very difficult. And that's often what people complain about in major programs and projects. And there needs to be trade-offs because of the sharing resources. And this is not based on what I would call a simple control theory. Engineers and IT people in the audience would understand what I mean. You know, you can't cause an action at one level and forecast accurately the reaction at another position. It's much more complex than that. So there needs to be trade-offs, there needs to be priorities set, and of course there needs to be an understanding of the overall strategy, because the priority for today may not represent their own units and even their own personal performance targets that are required. Nobody said it was easy, though.